Hey guys, it's Sherry Vegas, and in this tutorial we're going to be making some coasters and a tray that are ocean inspired out of resin. For this project I have some really tiny shells, abalone chips which you can get off my Amazon store, some silver chunky glitter, as well as a sparkly pigment powder which is from Archery Creations called Opal, a holographic glitter, as well as some white sand. Mixed up 150 mils of my epoxy casting resin, and I'm going to be dividing that into two, and on one side I'm going to be tinting it with some of my opal pigment as well as some of my turquoise tint, and this one is from Barnes. I'm only going to be adding a few drops as I don't want it to be too strong. I have 3 molds today. I have 2 coaster molds and 1 tray mold. I'm going to be working the same way the whole way through, so the bottom, it will be the top when I take them out of the mold. All I'm doing now is just pouring half of my clear resin into my coaster molds, and then the other half I'm going to be pouring in my tinted colored resin. Then with my heat gun on a low heat setting, I'm just going to quickly go over all of my pieces, just popping any bubbles. Now it's time to start adding some of the sparkles and shells into place. You can add as much or as little as you like, and you can also use different shaped shells. It's completely up to you. I just really like these abalone chips with this big chunky glitter and the really tiny shells. I'm only placing my shells in the clear part of the resin, as when I go to top coat this, I will be adding a wave effect and don't want to cover them. Once my resin had set, it's time to do my second layer of resin. So once again, I mixed up 150 mils of my casting resin, and I'm just adding in some of that holographic glitter as well as some of the white sand. Then give that a really good mix through your resin, and you can pour on top of your coasters once you're happy with the consistency. I did put some of the sand directly on top of the coaster and then resin on top of that to see if there would be any difference, and honestly it was the same effect as mixing it into the resin. So you might have noticed where I poured the clear resin has gone slightly foggy, and the reason behind this, and it's completely my fault, is I used the wrong kind of resin. So I've been pouring a few different pieces throughout the day, and I accidentally mixed up some deep pour casting resin instead of some shallow casting resin, because obviously I'm just doing coasters and trays, and that's what happens sometimes if you use the wrong kind of resin. I did think about completely scrapping these, starting again and showing you the right way the whole way through, but I thought it would be a really good learning opportunity for me to show you, because one, I still make mistakes, and two, kind of what happens when you pick the wrong kind of resin. So for this kind of project, you want to be using a shallow casting resin, and I accidentally did a deep pouring resin. So because I was doing another project that required that, I already had it out and I just didn't bother to check. I wasn't thinking. And so basically the difference between a deep pour resin and a shallow casting resin is the deep pour resin that I've got is designed to be poured at 3 centimeters and above. And the shallow casting resin is designed to be poured at 2 centimeters and less. And what can happen is if you try to pour shallow casting resin too deep, so say you try to pour it 4 centimeters in one go with shallow casting resin, what you can find is it heats up too much and will end up cracking, or will get tons of air bubbles. And that's why you want to use a deep pouring resin. So why you want to go for a deep pouring resin is because it has been designed to be poured really deep and not heat up too much. So it's not going to do what the shallow casting resin does, where if you pour it too deep, it heats up too much and causes those issues. Your deep casting resin has been designed to be poured deep. But what happens is sometimes if you do pour that too thin, you're going to get issues. So the same way you get issues if you pour shallow casting resin too deep, you get the same issues if you pour deep casting too thin. And the reason why there are both of those available is because sometimes you want items like coasters where you're only going to be pouring really thin layers, and sometimes you make bigger items like the river top tables where you're going to be doing big layers and you don't want to have to do tons and tons of thin layers because that's going to take you all day. But if you've got a deep pour resin, then you can mix up a big batch and just do one coat. So that's the difference, and I thought instead of just completely scrapping it and starting afresh, it'd be really good to show you guys the difference between the two and what happens if you do accidentally not follow the instructions and pour a deep casting resin really thinly. So I hope that has been a good little learning opportunity. I still have to top coat these, so hopefully when I do the top coat, I'll get a really nice shine back. And also because I put the last little coat of sand behind it, I don't think it's going to matter too much on the whole overall look of this. But if I was pouring something that I needed it to be crystal clear, then I would obviously have to start again. Once that layer of resin set, I then pulled all of my pieces out of the silicone mold. I'm going to be doing a top coat, so I am applying some liquid latex to the back of my coasters. This is a great technique to use if you do have a funny shaped item and you don't want to have to tape them off. This will prevent resin drips. Now, I already think these coasters look pretty amazing how they are, but to take it up to the next level, I am going to add a little bit of a wave effect across the top. I'm just pouring some of my epoxy art resin. So to start off with, I was using epoxy casting resin because I was casting my items. Now I'm using an epoxy art resin to do this wave effect. To create my waves, all I've done is add my resin and completely cover the top of my coaster in my clear resin. Then across where I would like my wave, I do a little swirly line of white. The white that I'm using today is from Just Resin. It's called Titanium White, and I've mixed that pigment paste into my resin and just done a thin line across the top of the surface. Now you can either use a heat gun or a blowtorch or both, depending on what you prefer, to start blowing that white out, and that creates that cells and lacing and looks like waves. A few of my top tips when trying to create cells and lacing and this wave effect is use less white than you think you're going to need. Because you are going to be using a blowtorch or a heat gun to blow the white across, it's going to expand out and you don't want to accidentally cover too much of the effect you've created underneath. And the second tip is to use a white that you know gets really good cells and lacing. Not all white pigment pastes are made the same. I particularly like this titanium white from Just Resin, as I find I get the best results. So the top coat and my waves are all done. I'll see if I can get a shot where you can see all the pretty like lacing and waves coming through. It's now time to take the latex off the back, and you can see I've gotten a few drips. So all I want to do is peel this latex off, and it should take all of the drips off at the same time. If you do have a few drips that are like kind of really sticking into place, you can always use your heat gun and heat them up, and it should make them just peel straight off. But most of these are just coming off with the latex. It's a really great method to use when you do have something that is a funny shape. Instead of taping it back, you can just use the latex. It makes it a lot easier. Tape, you'd have to cut all around and mirror the shape. And they've all just peeled off like that. And now I am left with my finished coaster. I think this looks super pretty. The last step that I'm going to do, which is optional, is I'm just going to add some silver around the edge. To do my silver edging, I'm going to be using this liquid chrome pen. I'll add it in the description where I got this. I got this from Artisan the Maker, which is a Brisbane-based store, but I'm sure if you search online, you can find it. I really love this pen. It's great for smaller items like this, and it comes out like liquid silver. It's really beautiful. Like, look how beautiful that is. It just comes out so stunning. It's the best silver sort of gilding pen I've found. I think these are it turned out really wonderful, even with that little mistake I made. I feel like with that top coat and the sand in the background, you don't even notice that the resin isn't crystal clear, just in that little clear bit. So I think it's all good. I probably won't be selling these because of that imperfection. I'll probably give them away. But we all make mistakes, and I hope that has taught you something and you've learned something from this tutorial. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps me out. It lets YouTube know to share this with more people. If you are new to my channel, please do subscribe. I post new videos every single week, all to do with like arts, crafts, DIY projects. I really focus on resin and alcohol inks and candle making. I'm really close to hitting 100,000, so I'd love to get there very soon. It'd be so exciting. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so that way you get notified every single time I do post a new video. Especially if you are missing out on the notifications, don't forget to hit that, and that way you will get notified. I also wanted to let you guys all know that I've started up a new Instagram, and it's just to do with my art. So if you want to, please go and check it out. It's SherryVegas_artist, and it's going to have a ton of information about my workshops, about tutorials, just behind the scenes stuff, finish artworks. You can ask me questions on there, so please go and follow. Thank you guys so much for watching.